Hi, my name is Kelsey Warren, and I'm doing this 5-minute video presentation on biodiversity and human health for the extra credit elective assignment. So I think this topic was just a little confusing at me from the start with the title because seeing the link between biodiversity of natural ecosystems and then its impact on human health, there just seemed to be a little bit of a disconnect for me when we were first learning about it. So I thought I would jump in a little deeper and see how those two are connected. So from a little more research outside of lectures, the main takeaway I had was that preserving biodiversity, mostly for food crops and agriculture, or even for the insects, parasites, pollinators, all of the organisms that help food production, maintaining biodiversity of those organisms is super critical for maintaining food production, which is then in turn critical for supporting human health based on having a healthy food supply. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about also maintaining water quality because there are parasites like we learned about, I think in that same week or the week after, that can impact water quality. And so maintaining biodiversity of different predators of those parasites, different relationships like that can provide clean access to water for human populations to maintain human health. And then I wanted to jump in also to the example we talked about in class with the malaria and mosquitoes, because I was a little convoluted and there was a lot going on. But basically, my take on it was that malaria is a protozoan parasite and it's transmitted by mosquitoes. And one fact that really stood out to me was that a child dies from malaria every 2 minutes in sub-Saharan Africa. And so that's obviously detrimental to human health. But then when you're combating that issue of large mosquito populations, like they did in California around like in the early 1900s, that can also be detrimental to human health. Like they used a ton of DDT and planted eucalyptus, which wasn't directly hurting human health, but it was an invasive species that's now super present in California. They also introduced mosquito-eating fish and destroyed larva habitats, which destroys more biodiversity, and that could impact human health through water quality and other factors like that. And then there are also different malaria treatments that may treat malaria, but may also be detrimental to human health in other ways, or bad for the environment, sourcing those medications. So I think I just wanted to overall touch on how decreasing biodiversity can impact human health, but then that impact on human health, like requiring treatment or solutions for whatever biodiversity issue there was, can then in turn impact biodiversity again. And so it keeps flip-flopping back and forth because the two are super interconnected. And then just moving on to the 3 categories described in lecture in week 8. We talked about there being 3 different kinds of links between biodiversity and human health, and those links were direct, indirect, and aesthetic value. And so direct links were consumable goods and services like food and water production that I was talking about earlier. And then the second one is indirect links, which are services provided by large-scale ecosystem interactions. And the last one, aesthetic value, has to do with intact biodiversity providing psychological well-being for humans, which is a big part of human health. And so one specific example with the direct and I guess kind of indirect also is with maintaining genetic diversity in food crops. So we had talked about maintaining genetic diversity in tomatoes in another week, and how there can be genetically modified tomatoes, but also we were talking about how most tomatoes that we eat as food have very limited genetic diversity, but maintaining wild type tomatoes is also helpful because they have a lot of genetic diversity, and that could eventually save tomatoes as a food source for us, which is important because they're a healthy food and supply a lot of essential nutrients and vitamins for us. And the same thing goes for bananas too, where bananas are also healthy for our digestive system and for providing energy and nutrients to us. But I think it's pretty well known that the bananas we consume have extremely limited genetic diversity. So maintaining other kinds of bananas and other high biodiversity of them is helpful to us because it could eventually save bananas as a food for us. So I think that was about all I wanted to talk about with biodiversity and human health. So thank you for watching.